Have you ever met someone who thought the entire neighborhood was their personal kingdom? Someone who strutted around like a sheriff, barking orders, clutching a clipboard as if it was the law itself? Well, when I moved into my new house, I met her. They called her the HOA Queen, but I called her Karen. Now, I wasn't officially supposed to move into my house until the following week. Paperwork was still pending, but the keys were already in my hands, and my lease gave me enough flexibility. So, I thought, why not get a head start? I packed up my old apartment, rented a moving truck, and rolled into the neighborhood earlier than planned. That was my first mistake. The moment my truck backed into the driveway, it felt like the air changed. Curtains twitched, doors creaked, open. Neighbors peeked out cautiously, their eyes darting back and forth like they were waiting for something, or someone. And then, like a storm gathering over the horizon, she appeared. Karen, mid-50s, sunglasses that looked surgically, attached to her face, a clipboard clutched like a weapon, and a walk that screamed, "I own this place." She stormed across the cul-de-sac, heels clicking against the pavement with military precision. I was halfway through unloading my couch when she stopped, folded her arms, and cleared her throat so loudly that even my driver winced. "Excuse me," she barked. You can't move in today." I paused, caught off guard. Sorry? Why not?" Karen adjusted her sunglasses, tilting her head like an interrogator. "Because your paperwork isn't finalized. HOA rules are crystal clear. No early occupancy. And this," she gestured toward my moving truck with disgust, "is a violation." I tried to be polite. "Look, my contract allows me some flexibility. I'm not causing trouble. I'm just unloading a few things early." Her lips pursed, so tight they practically disappeared. "You are causing trouble. You're disrupting the order of this neighborhood. And as president of the HOA, I'm telling you to leave immediately. Otherwise," her pause was deliberate, "otherwise, I'll have no choice but to involve law enforcement." I thought she was bluffing. Surely, no sane person calls the police over a couch and a couple of boxes, right? But I was wrong. Within 15 minutes, a patrol car rolled up, lights flashing. Neighbors gathered like moths to a flame, whispering, smirking, some even recording on their phones. To them, this was entertainment. To me, it was an ambush. The officer stepped out looking tired, as if he'd been through this routine before. "Sir," he sighed, "we got a call about an unauthorized move-in. Can you explain what's going on here?" Before I could speak, Karen jumped in like a prosecuting attorney. "Officer, this man is trespassing. He's moving in illegally. He doesn't belong here yet." The officer held up a hand, clearly irritated by her intensity. "Ma'am, I'll handle this." "Sir?" I showed him my contract, my ID, even the emails with the landlord that allowed me to move in a few days early. The officer flipped through the papers, glanced at me, and then looked at Karen. "Ma'am, this isn't a police matter." "Everything looks fine here." Karen's face turned beet red. "Fine. He's breaking our rules. If you don't remove him, I'll have no choice but to escalate this to City Council." The officer pinched the bridge of his nose, muttered something under his breath, and finally said, "Ma'am, HOA rules are not laws. If he's got permission from his landlord, then there's nothing I can do. Please stop calling us for this nonsense." And just like that, he got back in his cruiser and drove off. You'd think that would end it, right? You'd think Karen would lick her wounds and retreat. But no. That encounter was only the beginning, because in that moment, I saw it in her eyes. Pure fury, the kind that doesn't just fade away. Karen wasn't done with me, not even close. She wanted control, and I had just shattered her illusion of power. But what she didn't realize was that I wasn't just some pushover new neighbor. I knew how to fight back, and when I did, I'd hit her where it hurt the most. You'd think after the cops told her to back off, Karen would have retreated with at least a shred of dignity. But that's the thing about people drunk on power. They don't stop, they double down. The very next morning, before I'd even finished unpacking my boxes, I found a letter taped to my front door. No envelope, no signature, just bold black letters typed in all caps. Notice of violation. You are in breach of HOA regulations. Immediate compliance is required. Fines may apply. Fines? For what? I hadn't even been there 24 hours. I crumpled the paper, tossed it aside, and went back inside. But the message was clear. Karen wasn't done. She was declaring war. By the end of the week, I'd collected 3 more notices. One claimed my moving truck had been parked too long. Another said my trash bins were improperly placed. And my favorite? That my front lawn grass was not HOA-approved height. Mind you, I hadn't even cut the lawn yet. It was exactly as it had been when I got the keys. But Karen didn't care about facts. She cared about control. Neighbors whispered to me in hushed tones. "Don't fight her," one said. "She'll make your life hell," warned another. "She's been running this HOA like a dictatorship for years. No one dares cross her." That's when it clicked. Karen wasn't just some nosy neighbor. She was a tyrant, and the HOA was her crown. Every month she held meetings where she dictated rules, imposed fines, and berated anyone who dared to question her. The residents had given up. They'd stopped pushing back. It was easier to pay the fines and keep quiet than risk being targeted. But me? I wasn't built like that. So when the 4th notice arrived, this time claiming my car was parked too close to the curb, I decided enough was enough. I knocked on Karen's door. She opened it with a smug smile, as if she'd been expecting me. "Ah," she said, clipboard in hand, "the troublemaker." I kept my voice calm. "Karen, we need to talk. These violation notices you've been leaving, they're baseless. And harassment isn't part of the HOA charter." Her laugh was sharp, cold. "Harassment? Please, I'm simply enforcing rules. If you can't handle them, maybe you should move somewhere else." And then she leaned in, lowering her voice like she was delivering a death sentence. "Because I always win." That sentence stuck in my head like a spark waiting to ignite a wildfire. I walked back to my house that night, and instead of feeling defeated, I felt something else. Determination. If Karen always won, then I was going to be the first person to change that. So I started digging. I combed through HOA bylaws, state property codes, municipal ordinances, anything that could give me leverage. And that's when I found it. Buried deep in city planning documents was a regulation about driveway easements and right-of-way access. And suddenly, everything clicked. Karen had been so obsessed with controlling everyone else's property that she hadn't realized a fatal flaw about her own. Her driveway, her precious kingdom, was legally entangled with a piece of land the HOA technically didn't control, which meant I had options. Legal options. The kind of options that could cut straight through her power and leave her completely helpless. But before I launched my plan, I needed to endure one more showdown. The monthly HOA meeting. When I walked into that community hall, all eyes turned toward me. Karen sat at the head of the table like a queen on her throne, gavel in hand, lips curled into that smug little smirk. "Ah, the new resident," she announced, her voice dripping with condescension. "Here to learn how we do things properly?" The room chuckled nervously. I didn't smile. "No," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'm here to put an end to your nonsense." The room went silent. Karen's smirk twitched, and in that silence I knew one thing for certain. This war had only just begun. The HOA meeting smelled of burnt coffee and stale authority. Plastic chairs lined the room, and residents sat stiffly like schoolchildren waiting for detention. At the front, Karen slammed her gavel against the table, her throne in full display. "This meeting will now come to order," she barked, scanning the room like a queen surveying her subjects. Her gaze landed on me, sharp and poisonous, and first on the agenda, our newest resident and his numerous violations. She snapped her fingers, and one of her loyal board members handed her a stack of papers, supposed evidence. Pictures of my trash bin, my car, even my moving truck from weeks ago. She waved them around dramatically. This, ladies and gentlemen, is what happens when someone disrespects our community rules. I warned him. He ignored me. And if we don't enforce our standards, chaos will spread. The neighbors shifted uncomfortably, whispering. Some nodded out of fear, others out of habit. Finally, she stabbed the air with her pen like a sword. I motion that we fine him. $500 for repeated violations. Effective immediately. The room froze. My jaw tightened. $500 for trash bins and grass. This wasn't about order, it was about punishment. Seconded, one of her allies called out. Karen grinned, eyes glinting with triumph. All in favor? Hands rose slowly, reluctantly, like prisoners obeying their warden. Almost everyone raised their hand, except me. I stood up, calm but firm. Funny thing, Karen, I said, pulling out my own folder of papers. You've been so busy policing my trash bins that you didn't bother to check your own property records. Her smile faltered. What are you babbling about? I walked to the front, dropped the documents on the table, and let the silence thicken before speaking. Your driveway. According to city planning, the land your driveway crosses isn't fully under your property deed. It's considered a right-of-way easement. Confusion rippled through the room. Karen snatched the papers, eyes darting across the highlighted sections. I continued, my voice steady, controlled, which means technically I can apply for access rights. I can legally block it, permanently, with city approval. Gasps filled the hall. Neighbors leaned forward wide-eyed. Karen's face drained of color. You're bluffing. I shook my head slowly. No, I've already spoken to city officials. And guess what? They don't care about your HOA titles, your little fines, or your gavel. The law is the law. And legally, I can make sure you'll never use your driveway again. The room erupted in whispers. Some neighbors even chuckled under their breath. For the first time, Karen's grip was slipping, her fists clenched around the papers. You wouldn't dare. I leaned forward, locking eyes with her. Oh, I would. And unlike your fake fines, I've got the law on my side. The silence that followed was deafening. For years, Karen had ruled this neighborhood like a tyrant. But in that moment, her armor cracked. The mighty HOA Queen was suddenly exposed, and that was just the beginning. Because if Karen thought she could intimidate me into submission, she had no idea what storm I was about to unleash. The driveway. That was just the first card I planned to play. Her empire was about to crumble, piece by piece. The morning after the HOA meeting, the atmosphere in the neighborhood had changed. People who used to avoid eye contact with me now gave me curious glances, small nods, even faint smiles. Word spread quickly. The new guy had finally stood up to the queen. But Karen? She wasn't going down without a fight. That same afternoon, she stormed into my yard, heels stabbing into the grass like daggers. You think you're clever? She hissed. Threatening me in front of my neighbors? You'll regret this. Kept my cool. Not a threat, Karen. A legal reality. Her jaw twitched. Do you have any idea who you're dealing with? I've been running this HOA for 15 years. I am the law here. I smiled. Correction. You were. But the city doesn't care about your crown, your clipboard, or your fake fines. They only care about the law. And with that, I handed her an envelope. Inside was a copy of the official application I had filed with the city, an easement claim that would give me the legal right to use, restrict or even obstruct the portion of land her driveway crossed. Her hands trembled as she scanned the document. Her lips parted, but no words came out. "Consider this your eviction notice from my patients," I said calmly. "You called the cops on me. You harassed me. You tried to humiliate me. Now it's my turn." For the first time, the Queen was speechless. The following weeks were a whirlwind. Karen tried everything: emails, phone calls, even lobbying city officials to deny my application. But what she didn't understand was that the law was ironclad. The easement existed, and she had no authority over it. Neighbors began to notice her unraveling. She went from strutting through the neighborhood like a queen to pacing around her yard like a prisoner. Every time she drove her car, she stared at me with daggers in her eyes, knowing that at any moment her freedom could be taken. And then the city letter arrived. It was official. My easement rights had been approved. I could now, legally and without question, restrict her driveway access. Permanently. I'll never forget the look on her face when she saw me standing at the edge of her driveway with that letter in hand. She marched over, snatched it, and read it twice, her face turning paler with every line. This isn't fair," she sputtered. "You can't do this to me. I'll sue. I'll drag you to court." I shrugged. "Go ahead. Every lawyer in this county will tell you the same thing. I'm within my rights. The driveway's not fully yours. You should have read your own property records before trying to control everyone else's." Her scream echoed down the block. Birds scattered from the trees. Curtains twitched as neighbors peeked out, grinning behind their blinds. Because for the first time in years, they weren't watching Karen win. They were watching her fall. And fall she did. The HOA empire she had built on fear and intimidation began to crumble. Residents who once obeyed her without question now ignored her notices. Some even confronted her, citing my stand as proof that she wasn't invincible. Her once loyal allies on the board started backing away, not wanting to be associated with a sinking ship. At the next meeting, attendance was the highest it had been in years, not to support her, but to challenge her. I sat in the back row, arms crossed, watching the show. Karen slammed her gavel, but the authority was gone. Her voice cracked as she tried to enforce fines, only for residents to push back. "Show us the law," they demanded. "Where's the proof?" She had none. Her reign of fear had ended, and all it took was one person refusing to bow. But I wasn't done yet, because while Karen's crown was already slipping, I still had one final move to make. One move that would strip her of power forever, and it involved her precious driveway. By the time my easement approval was official, Karen was already crumbling. She'd lost her grip on the HOA, her board was fracturing, and her neighbors were no longer afraid. But I wasn't about to let her walk away with even a shred of power left. No, she needed to feel the weight of her own arrogance. So, one sunny morning, I hired a contractor. Within hours, bright orange cones, fresh signs, and a row of sturdy posts were installed, right at the edge of her driveway. A chain was strung between them, locked tight, blocking her car from entering or exiting without my permission. It was bold. It was final, and it was 100% legal. Karen burst out of her front door like a hurricane, screaming so loudly I'm sure the next neighborhood could hear. "What the hell is this?" she shrieked. I stayed calm, leaning casually against one of the posts. "Just exercising my easement rights. Don't worry, I left you a pedestrian path. You can still walk out." Her face turned crimson. You can't. This is harassment. This is... I cut her off. "No, Karen, this is the law. And if you doubt me, call the cops. Again." She did. When the officers arrived, the same ones she'd dragged into her drama before, they examined my paperwork, inspected the posts, and sighed. "Ma'am." "One," officer said, holding the papers. "He's within his rights. There's nothing we can do." Karen screamed. She begged. She even tried to bribe them with coffee and cookies, but the officers shook their heads and left her standing there, humiliated, on her own driveway while the entire neighborhood watched from their porches. The days that followed were glorious. Karen's car sat stranded, trapped behind the chain like a caged animal. Every morning, she stomped past it on foot, muttering curses under her breath, while neighbors who once feared her laughed quietly from their windows. Her empire was gone. HOA. Fines? Worthless. Her clipboard? A joke. Her throne? Reduced to an empty chair in a meeting no one respected anymore. Within months, a petition circulated through the community. Enough signatures gathered to officially remove her as HOA president. She fought it tooth and nail, but democracy crushed her iron fist. The queen had been dethroned, and me. I became the guy who ended her reign. The neighbor who stood up when no one else would. The man who turned her own arrogance against her. Even after she was gone, that driveway stood as a monument, a reminder to everyone that power is only as strong as the people who allow it. I'll never forget the last time I saw her. She was moving out, boxes stacked in her car, eyes hollow with defeat. She glared at me one final time, her voice bitter and broken. "You ruined everything," I smiled. "No, Karen, you did. I just made sure you couldn't ruin anyone else." Here drove off, and just like that, the HOA Queen was gone. And I had legally blocked her driveway forever.